Hey, good morning, LinkedIn, and good morning, Facebook, YouTube. What's going on? We're back with another Dialed In to ElevateXchange. I have a double feature for us today. I got Pat Benoit on right now at 8 o'clock, and I got George Crawford coming on at 8:30. And before we start the show, you see Pat and I here bright and early. Please join us. Let us know in the comments where you are watching from, if you're watching this live or watching the replay. What you're drinking in your cup this morning, and feel free. Don't be shy. Jump in, ask questions, make comments. We'll throw them up on the screen if they're relevant, and we'll answer them directly as we go. Before we start the show, just a quick announcement. This is the last week of our promotion for the Elevate IT event that's going on this Friday, July 10th. So if you have not registered yet, this is a CIO and IT focused event. It's all virtual, so it's encompassing TOLA, so Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana. You can register right now at eitevents.com. Head on over to the website, check it out, register. It's going to be really cool. This year, we've also done some cool things. Me in particular, put together a future of work pavilion, teamed up with some people, and we're going to start a whole new conversation around the future of work and bring some vendors in to talk about it. So it should be really interesting. Hope to see that turn out pretty well. And without further ado, let's kick off the show. There will always be somebody stronger, faster, and smarter than you. Surviving depends on your adaptability to change. Those who are the most adaptable are dialed in. Hey, good morning, Pat Benoit. Welcome to the show.
How you doing? Thanks for having me. It's always pleasure, always fun, and I went different. So I'm drinking chai tea today. So with my hashtag data cartels cup from a friend of mine. So.
Nice, awesome. I got some yerba mate in my cup today.
There you go.
Which is irregular for me, but it's interesting. So Pat Benoit is a BISO, Business Information Security Officer, kind of unique for CBRE. You're a pilot. You're a man of many interests, jack of all trades. Some may say, right? And let's talk about what you're most dialed into.
Well, what we talked about discussing today is this idea of diversity and inclusion, and talking a little bit more about expanding our focus on that and expanding our perspective and going beyond just the character traits that we normally hear about and we normally see focus on in diversity and inclusion, and instead look at how we bring diversity and inclusion of experience, both professionally and personally, and diversity and inclusion of skill sets and thought processes, and just the way people handle problems, the way they handle resolution of problems, solutions, and so forth, and just go beyond that idea. It's a character trait. It's I'm this and you're that, and I need more of this and more of that, and instead look at what are the skills, what are the experiences that we really need.
Right. And so in your role as a BISO, right, I understand that you, like a traditional CISO, Chief Information Security Officer, your role is basically to explain that in the business sense, and that's where this whole development of the diversity, looking for diverse skill sets, comes into play, right?
Yeah, and it's a perfect, it's really almost a perfect analogy in what I'm doing, because I've also taken a little bit different approach towards the security executive role. And instead of being purely focused on the operations and the pen testing and the identity and access management, all those technical things, those are all important. And instead of being focused on governance, risk, and compliance, again, all important, I'm also adding the dimension of, security leaders must be sales leaders. So I need to bring a skill set to the BISO role that is a sales skill set. So I can tell a proper story, so I can interact with people, so I can build relationships with clients, so I can help my sales teams in pursuits and account management upsell based on security, because everybody's interested in security. And on the other side of the coin is helping my product teams be able to build security, by design into their products, so that I've got a good story to tell. It's difficult to tell a story if the product you have is not at the right level and you don't have good things to tell about it. So, that's an example of, if I go out looking for a BISO to hire on my team, hopefully someday we get past COVID and that becomes a possibility again, then I'm looking for those kind of skill sets. I'm looking for those that ability to communicate, to interact with people, to be open and outwardly facing, and not be, but at the same time have the skills to talk technically and translate into business language, so that we're not always throwing buzzwords around either. So I think that's a good example of what we're looking for when we talk about diversity, other than the character traits.
Got it. Yeah. So it's really interesting, right? Because you're talking about something that's a pressing issue, right? Even more and more, diversity, right? The word itself, the buzzword in itself. But we're trying to take that deeper than just appearances and this or that. Take that into like that creating a diverse team of skills. So could you give us an example? I'm having a hard time still like visualizing it fully. Maybe give us an example of like what that might look like on say a team that you would build.
Well, so if we kind of bring together this idea of potential character traits, or not character traits, but potential traits and skills, we might generalize that a younger person might have a fresher view of things, and an older person might have maybe an older, more traditional view of things. That may or may not be true, but so if we focus on just the idea of the stereotype, then we may get, we may overlook, say, an older person that has very, very creative, innovative, dynamic, fresh ideas, for a younger person that maybe is, for whatever reason, much more traditionally thinking or conservative thinking, not very risk averse. All because we tried to stereotype the skill we were looking for against some trait. And instead, I think we have to talk to those people and explore with them through question and answer. Anything we want to know, we can get to by asking more questions. If you're ever at a loss for words, if you're ever a situation is escalating and you're not sure exactly how to bring it down a notch or so, just ask a question, and ask a question in a non-defensive way. Give the person a way to get out of that. So, there's another example of a skill set. If we have somebody that we want somebody that's able to deal with resolving conflicts, and not necessarily conflicts that are huge arguments or anything like that, but everything we do is often a conflict of ideas, or a conflict of direction, or conflict of strategy or tactics or whatever. So you want somebody that can moderate, facilitate, mediate those kinds of discussions and lead to a good solution for the company, the team, and the individuals as a whole. That is we can say a compromise in that respect. So that's a skill that we'd be looking for. That's a diverse skill in my mind, because not everybody can walk that walk. Some people are pretty rigid about how they want to attack things. They can maybe be too abrasive. Other people maybe are offended too easily, or all these different little nuances. So sit down when you're thinking about your team members and your roles, and say to yourself, and again, I'll come back to my example. If I want a BISO, then I need somebody that has that skill set. So that's a good example. I need somebody that can tell a story, that's articulate, that can make the story interesting, that can help resolve differences easily, conflict resolution, because oftentimes the client is asking for one thing and we're only able to deliver another. So you want to get to a point that satisfies the client, but does not, degrade the security, in this case, that you're providing to the client. So those are specific skill sets. So look, when you put the role together, don't just think about the role being here's the here's the actions that they have to take to accomplish their job, get X, Y, Z done. Think about what skill sets are needed, diverse skill sets are needed to accomplish each one of those and be successful in each one of those. So if I say I need somebody that can get to a solution, then okay, what skills would be necessary to get to a solution? Well, I need somebody that's organized. I got to have some organizational skills or I can't get there. I need somebody that can speak in terms and adjust their language to whatever the audience is, and clearly convey the message or the story. So those would be three examples of skills that are very diverse because not everybody has them. And if you have a whole team of people that don't have those, but you're trying to accomplish that mission, it's not going to work.
Right, right. Yeah, no, that's huge. And you know, stereotypes are so dangerous, right? So, so how do you? There's a lot of people in the workforce right now that are looking for employment, especially now. So how does somebody basically portray those characteristics that you're looking for? How do they develop these, right?
Yeah. And you kind of reminded me of there's kind of two aspects of this. One, when you talk about people coming into the job market, is that there's the aspect of there's so many thousands of resumes that come through, and how do you get past like an HR bot, because there's going to be some kind of automated process usually on the front end that's going to screen you through. You know, those are unfortunately kind of check boxes that you look for and say, you know, what are the keywords that are going to drive the correct performance in that particular role. And frankly, you may have multiple resumes. You may have resumes that have certain keywords based on certain titles or roles or descriptions that you're trying to achieve versus a different way you've worded a resume for another type of role. So you have to be careful to get past the gatekeepers first. But then when you start talking about, you know, if I'm doing an interview, then I don't, you know, I'm not going to ask a person in a senior role, for instance. I got asked one time when I was to lead a technical team, but it was like a technical team of 50 or 60 people. So odds are I wasn't going to have my hands on the keyboard, but I actually got asked in an interview if I knew what the port number for Citrix was. And I was like, you know, I can go look that up if you really want me to. It's probably this, but the fact is that's not my job. You know, you guys are the smart guys. So my job is to help facilitate your job. So that skill is not a skill. That knowledge is not a knowledge I have to have.
That's a Google search away.
Like, yeah, exactly. So
who cares? Who cares?
Exactly. Be careful about asking questions that are specific to the kind of skill that you're trying to get. If I want somebody to exhibit to me that they know how to sell something, then I might set up a scenario and say, hey, I've got this idea for a product or whatever. So tell me how you might put together a story about that product. How would you tell me about this product to pique my interest, to get me interested in something like that?
So the whole point of that is kind of basically seeing how they think and process information, how they put it together, right?
Exactly.
More important than what they even say.
Oh, absolutely. And it's also you ask questions about, so what have they done in their professional and personal lives? You know, there may be some very personal things that are personal hobbies or processes they've been through, things they've been through in their life that are very, very applicable that may not necessarily show up directly on their resume in their professional life. I guess if I had to think of an example, I might use myself and say something like, well, being a pilot, I have, you know, an adaptation and an inclination towards using checklists for everything. So, you know, building checklists and using those checklists to know that things are accomplished operationally is a transferable skill set that should be considered if you're looking for somebody to say, be an incident manager. Well, running an incident is a very checklist oriented thing. Now, there's a lot of outside the box thinking that goes on too, but you start out with a very, very kind of checklist process to make sure you don't miss anything, or to go back and say, oh, wait, we forgot to check this, let's check this. And then you have the troubleshooting aspect, two different skill sets. So that's an example of where, in my mind, some personal hobby or other aspect of life, very, very applicable to the role that you're trying to hire. So, look for those nuances and come in prepared with looking at not just what the role has to do, but what the people need to be successful in that role of what they have to do.
Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. And, it's interesting that you bring up the checklist thing as well. Do you think that you can, like, you build the box for yourself? Do you think you box yourself in? There's a danger of boxing yourself in too much to, like, being too bound to the checklist, or are you constantly evolving the checklist?
Well, no, you should constantly evolve the checklist. You should, if you want to try and prevent yourself from boxing yourself in, you can further, add further rigor to it by forcing yourself to have a review, or forcing it to be reviewed by somebody else on a periodic basis. That would be an example of doing that. But you bring up an interesting point in that when you start talking about diversity, and you talk about stereotyping and applying all of these traits and kind of saying, well, because of this traits, this person does this, or will act like this, or we should have a person because of a trait that we think is going to give us something. It's because in our head, we categorize everything. You can try and get away from it, and I guess that's in the most extreme if you look at it pretty generally. Everything we look at, we go, okay, what category does it fall into? Animal, vegetable, mineral. It's up, it's down, it's right, it's left, it's this, that, and everything like that. So we categorize and we put stuff in those little boxes, which is what you're talking about to some degree, that may restrict us thinking beyond that. So you just have to be open to the idea that instead of it being the concept of being a category, which is more of a box, think of it more as a tag or an attribute. And think of it in terms of, that person has a skill tag that is XYZ, that can, they have a skill tag as a negotiator, let's say. That doesn't mean they're only a negotiator. That doesn't mean that their negotiator is their category of skill. It just means that in the grand scheme of everything they can do, they have a tag, an attribute called negotiator, which is one more thing that they can use. It's one more, arrow in the quiver, so to speak, that they can use in what they're doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I think no one has the right answer on it, because it's hard, because we have to categorize things. Otherwise our brains would be just complete chaos. We wouldn't even know what is what. Like, we wouldn't know that this is a computer, or this is a webcam. Like, we have to categorize things.
Right.
So it's this constant, like, duality of fighting that categorization to get the diversity you need in your team, right? So, like, it's a constant battle, it feels like.
And that's why you flip the script a little bit, and that's why I'm saying, kind of change your thinking from a category to a tag.
Yeah, I like that. So it's like adding a hashtag.
Exactly, adding a hashtag, and oh, by the way, tags can be put on and tags can come off.
Yeah.
It's much harder to change categories, in my opinion, and so that's only to draw a picture, but that's how you start to change the way you think. I'm a big believer in trying not to apply labels as we talk about things. So if I talk about a person, instead of saying pick the adjective person, instead just say a person. Yeah. The adjective is not important. Now, on the backside of that, after the verb, you have behavior that you can just used without. In my opinion, the behavior is never categorical, so to speak. It's never stereotypical. The behavior is what they did. The behavior is the behavior. It's just something. Now you can view it differently and so on, but I never said, this, pick any category. This Asian person, this Italian person, this Indian person, this African person. I said this person did this. It's two different things. So again, we're flipping the script to look at skills and behaviors and experiences instead of being too focused on categories of traits that tend to lock us into some preconceived notion, potentially based on our own experience. It's all based on the story we have in our head. And so until we get by the story in our head, it's really difficult to get the right answers externally.
It is, man. It's really hard to kind of unlive what you've lived to get, to get out of the box and get out of the categories. So I mean, I like what you said about the basically like hashtags, like tags for different characters. That's really cool. So what do you think? How do you think that's evolving the role of the BISO and just roles in cyber and tech in general?
Well, I think what we're seeing in cyber in general, a good example, much like we did in IT, is we're seeing an evolution of the technical. Early on, we had a very technical person with their hands on the keyboards that eventually had to lead a team of people with their hands on the keyboards, but they still had their hands on the keyboards. And then eventually the teams got too big, or the role got too broad that they weren't able to touch the keyboard anymore, because all of these other folks outside of IT, outside of cyber, were asking business questions. So then they had to adapt. The person had to adapt to start answering business questions. And that's just an evolutionary process. That's a growth process. And I think IT is ahead of us, in my mind, generally, because the CIO role evolved earlier than the CISO role. The CISO role is now evolving, but you will find far, far, far greater numbers of CIOs that are truly C-level executives on the executive committee, actively involved in running the company at that level. You will find far fewer CISOs that are true C-level on the executive committee, doing the same thing. And that's an evolution process. You still see many CISOs are reporting to CIOs, reporting to CTOs, reporting to CROs, CFOs, whatever they are. They're still a level down. And I think that has a lot to do with this, again, this maturity, this evolution of learning to speak business language, learning to complement and market the skills as an executive, as opposed to the skill as a business leader, as opposed to the skills of a cyber leader or a technology leader, or put in X, whatever you want to fill in for X there. So if we take this idea of learning to think broader, more holistically, more openly, ask questions, that's what our senior leaders do. I mean, let's face it. Everybody walks into every board meeting with anxiety, not because they're the senior leaders, the board members are going to sit there and just listen to what they have said and move on. It's because they know they're going to get asked questions. So they're trying to anticipate those questions. So, be open to answering questions. Don't shy away from questions. Don't shy away from saying you don't know if you don't have the answer, but you'll go find out. That's those kinds of things that will help us learn, grow, and evolve into the next generation of what a true C-level executive, both in technology and cyber, will look like.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that's because, and this is from my perception, again, life experience that I've experienced, do you think it's because we have collectively valued security less than we do now, and so the value of security is going up, right? That's my perception, that the value
Uh,
of security in an organization is increasing in value.
Yeah, and I think Thomas dropped a little comment in there, and I think he used the term pendulum, and I think there is a certain amount of pendulum effect, and you're kind of talking about that. We did not value security for a long time, and we continue to swing further and further into valuing security, and at some point it's going to have to swing back to. It's not a matter of valuing or not valuing security. It should be a matter of it's table stakes. It's part of our business, much like technology is. I can't remember the gentleman's name, but I listened to him once talk about this idea. It was actually on a show with Alan Alford and David Sparks and those guys, and he put forth this idea, which I say all the time, is we have to stop thinking in terms of being collaborative with the business, supportive of the business, partnering with the business. No, technology and cyber is the business, just like sales is the business, and finance is the business. We can't separate ourselves. That's a good example of how through labeling and through the words we use, we've created a self-imposed segregation from the rest of the business.
Right,
and it's not. We are the business.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's being the stereotype of you're just IT. Go back into the IT department, right?
Right.
And
Right. Every IT leader.
Mind your business. Get back in the IT department. But the
Yeah.
IT department is the business. Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, you've heard me preach it for years that whether you say security or IT, they are interchangeable, or in some ways any other label there. We have to be sales leaders, because in the end, it's sales that matter to the business. You can cut away all the other stuff, but if you had zero profit, it wouldn't be good for a while. If you have zero sales, you don't have a business. So we have to start thinking, like sales leaders. So I keep pressing, why aren't technology leaders looking for opportunities to somehow monetize their IT function? I don't know what the answer to that is. I can tell you, like for security, for me, one of the things I'll evolve to is being able to sit in front of the customer so often that and impress them so much with the level and maturity of security that we can provide, that they're going to start asking me questions about, wow, how can we do that? And then I'm going to start selling consulting services as a value add. I'll let our sales guys start selling consulting services for security consulting as a value add, not as a core line of business, but to our core business, our core customers that need it. Smaller companies, maybe they don't have that. Maybe they like what we're doing, and we're already working together in a vendor client relationship. Why can't we help them with that too if they want? So technology leaders, in my mind, have to start thinking about ways to bring more to the business.
Oh, brilliantly said. Brilliantly said. You bring more to the business. Now you're not necessarily just a cost center, but you're a producing center too.
Right. Exactly. And too many people get hung up on this idea. Again, this is our preformed ideas that lead us sometimes to not push forward. Just because you're not, quote, profitable does not mean that you're not in a better place. So, and what I mean by that is, if I have a cyber or an IT group and we have $0 of revenue brought in, then we still have zero profit. If I have an IT group that brings in $1 of revenue, then guess what? We're less of a burden by $1. We're still not profitable. And oh, by the way, it completely changes the perception of the department. think about how the rest of the company begins to react to your technology folks when all of a sudden on that pie chart in the quarterly review or the town hall, it shows, you know, one little sliver that says revenue from IT or revenue from security, along with the other lines of business. You know, all of a sudden, your team becomes a different animal to everybody too. And so sometimes it's marketing, and sometimes, you know, you don't have to be profitable to take a step forward.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely, that's brilliant. So as we're winding down, Pat, a couple more questions, and then we're going to turn it over to George. I see he's online now. So what's the best piece of advice you've ever received, or a quote or short phrase that you could leave us with?
Well, I would say always be you know, listen and be open to and ask questions. Listen, be open, and ask questions. And the reason is that we oftentimes are thinking so fast and thinking ahead of ourselves that we don't really hear what's going on, and we don't really get all of the information first. So, you know, ask questions, ask questions, ask questions, and be open to what answers you get, and look for diversity in skill and experience, not just in traits.
Love
Tag, don't categorize, right? Tag, don't categorize.
I don't categorize. I love that. And speaking of being open and asking questions and answers, we got one that just popped up just now. It says, "Great show, Kyle. First time caller. Question for Patrick. IBM recently came out with a study that average enterprise has 45 cybersecurity tools on their network. Statistically, more is not helping business defend, respond to cyber threats. How do cyber professionals best evaluate their cyber tools?"
Yeah, I actually had a topic once for presentation that I had laughingly, to me at least, titled "Cyber Field of Dreams." You know, if we buy it, it will fix everything, and that's really not true. We all know it, and so I think the problem is that we're saturated with vendors right now. So we have to do a lot of culling to get to what we want, and we have to look for ways. It's cliche, but you know, get more out of what we have. You know, don't buy a tool for such a narrow focus only, unless you can't get it anywhere else. And try to get at least that 80% usage out of the tools that we have. You know, take a step back, rationalize all your tools, look at what you have. We have the same problem in technology with just applications in general. There are many companies out there that, you know, have applications to service their customers, and they might have, you know, 1,000 applications when they could probably do what they needed to do with 150 if they would just pick a direction and run with it. So, you know, just take time to rationalize and make better use of what you have. There's no magic bullet for that problem.
Awesome, awesome. I appreciate that. Appreciate having you on the show again today, Pat. Pleasure as always.
Yep, my pleasure. Thanks, Kyle.
All right, cool.
Bye.
Take care. All right, up next, George Crawford. Hey, good morning, George. How are you, sir? You are live on the air. Can you hear me? See me? George. Okay, so while he's getting set up, quick reminder. Earlier in the show, reminded you about the event this Friday. So this Friday, July 10th, Elevate IT is going virtual. So it's a DFW Technology Summit. We normally meet in person, but of course, with everything going on, this will be taken completely virtual. Last chance to register this week, starting at 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. this Friday, July 10th. To register for the event, you can register at eitevents.com. So hope to have you register and join us there. We got a lot of good stuff going on. We're going to be having the Future of Work Summit as well there, Future of Work Pavilion. So we're bringing together vendors and making them kind of work together in harmony to help us paint the picture for the future of work. So should be good stuff. George, can you hear me? Having slight technical issues. Let me check the. Let me just go offline real quick for 1 second and check with George. Just 1 second. Yes, we got you.
Great.
There we are. Good
So you
morning,
can hear
sir.
me okay?
How are you? Yes, we can. Yes, we can. And you are live on the air.
The audio
You
is
can't-
gone again.
You can't hear me? Okay, hang on. We'll figure this out.
Okay, and you can hear me online?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm getting
Feedback?
feedback. Yeah, not good.
Okay. I mean, if you can hear me online, I can't. Here. You know what I can do? I can put on my.
Yeah, I can hear you on there.
Okay, I can put on headphones real quick, and then I can hear you, and you won't be able to hear me. Is that okay, or is it? You want? I can put on headphones real quick if you want.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
There we go. Okay, there we are.
Okay, that's working now. Can you
Yeah,
hear
there
me?
we go. Yeah, we got you. We're
Okay,
loud and
Kyle.
clear. Sorry for the technical issue there, but
Yeah, sorry about that.
no worries. So George, welcome to the show. Before we get going, since this is recorded, we're recording the podcast. I'm going to play a quick intro, and then we're going to get right into your topic today. 1 second.
Great. Thanks.
There will always be somebody stronger, faster, and smarter than you. Surviving depends on your adaptability to change. Those who are the most adaptable are dialed in. Morning, welcome back to the show. I'm joined by George Crawford. He's a CIO, CISO for Catapult Energy Services, over 25 years in his role as CIO. Good morning, George. Are you ready to get dialed into the show today?
I am, Kyle. How are you this morning?
Awesome, man. Awesome. So, what is the thing? We know you're a CIO and you have an extensive career with that. But what is the thing within that paradigm that you are the most dialed into?
From the CIO and CISO perspective within Catapult?
Yes, the topic that you're the most dialed into that we could talk about for days.
Yeah, well, the topic obviously most dialed into right now is making sure for our companies in oil and gas that we're tuned into the existing market and that we're trying to go through this shift that we have going on right now and being able to be viable companies grow in this time of challenge when a lot of the oil prices and the different things that are going on right now prevent us from being real robust environment in the oil and gas completion environment. So that's really where we're trying to be really innovative and trying to be very transformational in how we're approaching things to be able to continually be profitable and get out the other side and look at mergers, acquisitions, and other things that make sense.
Oh yeah. So oil and gas obviously took a really big hit lately, right? And not really showing much positive signs in the near term future, right? But long term, we know that it's going to be a necessity. It's not going anywhere. So
Right.
what are some of the challenges that you guys are working through now?
Well, some of the challenges we're working through right now, obviously, we have a lot of individuals that are essential, so they have to be on site. We can't do a lot of the remote features and the individuals working within the company. We can do that for all the back office and other areas. So that was our initial challenge, getting everyone up and ready through this COVID time. That's all kind of ironed out. It's kind of smooth sailing right now and getting great productivity from our troops. So that's awesome. Understanding the new paradigm shift associated with that. People that aren't used to working at home and things. So changing that, working through the HR and the culture environment to be able to be really productive during this time. And then the challenges we face are being safe and keeping everyone out in the field as safe as we can, because again, we have to be out there. So that's one of the biggest challenges that we're facing right now associated with the oil and gas area and different environments. So we've created some new tools that keep people, they take it each day to make sure that they're safe, they don't have any symptoms or signs associated with COVID, to keep their fellow personnel safe and themselves. And so we go through that process now. We implemented that's working great. And so all of that, and then the communication that we're having constantly with all of our customer base associated with the COVID, because again, we're in their environments. And the difficult thing for us is that we're around third parties out in the field. So we have a lot of that going on too. So we've leveraged technology to be able to keep us as safe as we possibly can in the field. So those are some of the things that we're trying to do from a technology perspective, be able to keep our guys working and keep them safe and informed and change the culture as we're going through it.
Oh yeah, that sounds like a very challenging time. Definitely is. So with respect to your career, right, 30 plus years in the technology career. So you've been through a lot. You've seen a lot of ups and downs. You've gone through a lot of different scenarios, I assume. So can you maybe take us through some of those that kind of molded your career to where it is now, to becoming where you are now as the CIO?
Yeah.
So take us through one of those stories, one of those times.
Okay. Well, I think a lot of that has to do, and one of the things that I really try to promote with my peers as well as with the students that I mentor and others is the communication, and being able to communicate within your organization effectively from a technology perspective is really important. So from a technology perspective, the thing that's really changed over time, over my career, is originally, as a technologist, we always wanted to have a seat at the table because we knew, and we've known for a long time, the more interactive we are with our peers, with the other business leaders, with the board, with the C-suite, the more we interact with that, the more rapport that we establish with them, the more that we're going to be able to help them be innovative and transformational within what they're doing. So to gain that trust and rapport, we have to be able to speak multiple languages. So you have to be able to speak finance and accounting. You have to be able to speak sales and marketing. You have to speak operations. So one of the things that has really helped me from an operational perspective, because as a CIO being in the corporate office on a regular basis, you don't really get access to the operational side of things, but there's such a tremendous amount, especially in oil and gas, that you can do from an operational perspective that makes a big impact, that really moves the needle associated with your company, that can be competitive advantages and other things. So one of the things that really helped me is we had an issue with one of our companies. The president and CEO had to go in another opportunity. So I stepped in and I got to be the president and COO, for that company. So I really learned the operational side in the oil and gas area. So all those things that are important from that. So from that, it was tremendously helpful because we implemented so many new tools and so many different things of technology that made it easier for our guys in the field to do the things they needed to do. And we got much more robust information that we started leveraging that data and that information then to be able to be more effective and more profitable within the field. So I think over my career, the thing that I've really learned is that the communication with others and establishing that rapport and being able to speak their language is paramount. So, and having that opportunity to be the president and COO of that one company and understanding how to speak the language of operations, which I had never had before, and being able to do that. And then at the same time, when you're talking to any group, you have to talk to them and you have to speak their language or they're going to glaze over. One of the things that I've always done in my presentations is we talk about the 3-second glaze, which is if you're in the boardroom talking to them and they say, hey, come in and tell us what's going on, and you start talking technology, within 3 seconds, you've glazed them over, lost them, and now you're not being effective in your communication with them. So you have to learn how to speak to the board. You have to learn how to speak to the different groups. So I think over my career, that's the number one thing I think is really paramount, is being able to effectively communicate at any level with any group.
I love the 3-second glaze, and we're not talking about donuts here. 3-second glaze. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Go back and listen to that part if you're watching this later. So you were juggling the CIO role and thrown into the president and COO all at the same time. I mean, that sounds stressful. So how did you manage? How did you do both?
Well, I have a really great team. So that's extremely important for any leader within the technology group as a CIO or CISO. The team is really the essence of what you do within that organization. So as a leader, the whole idea is when you build that team and you have that rapport with your team, then everyone kind of understands the challenge that you're facing at that particular time, and through that communication process that you have with them. And again, my team is awesome. They're the stars, right? That's how it normally is. You get a face associated with being president, CEO of this or CIO of this, but it's really your team and those team dynamics and the people within your team that make you shine as an individual. So I always give the credit to them because they're the ones that are really deserving of the credit. So that's really was a huge thing for me. All my whole team stepped up, supported me, and really helped and facilitated because I was out in the field probably 60% of the time. So that's when you get that communication process and the culture that you've established over the years that really comes up and supports that endeavor.
Oh, awesome, awesome. And how do you think the role of the CIO/CISO is evolving, especially now? Obviously,
Yeah.
you're dealing with a lot of uh, in the times related challenges, but beyond that, like, how do you see this role evolving?
Well, it's evolving because it's evolving because of perception of the different leaders within your organization on the CIO. So 15 years ago, we were the computer guys, right? So that was technology.
Mhm.
And now what we're doing is we're establishing ourselves in the business community within our environments. And once you start gaining that respect from a business perspective within the other individuals within your group, now when you talk to them and you've helped them through a business issue, you've helped them become a star, which I'll give you a quick example. At the previous company I was with, we had an engineering group, and they were responsible for about 50% of our revenue, but the profitability wasn't quite there. And the individual that was over that was this old trusty engineer that knew all about engineering and did a great job. Our projects were very successful, but they weren't as profitable as they could have been. He didn't really care about that side of it. He wanted to execute properly and be a good contributor. But no one could talk to him. No, he didn't have respect for anyone. I went in and worked with him for probably, I don't know, 3-4 months and established that rapport. It was very, very slow going, but I was able to do that. And that changed our profitability from about the 21% to about 48%. But it's established in that rapport. I was an engineer background. I knew how to talk to him. I was on projects with him. I actually worked on different projects with him. And as we did that, then I established that rapport more and more. So once you do that, he saw me as part of his environment, and he knew I understood his business. Once you start doing that and getting into understanding the other elements of the business, whether it's finance and accounting, and you know what the challenges are from an accounting perspective in that process, but they respect you because you've shown that you understand the business side of the issue now. So that's really where a lot of things are shifting for the CIO and the CISO and others, is we're now getting a seat at the table. We're starting to gain that rapport with the other business leaders, and we're starting to gain the respect that and the irony of it, I tell people, the irony of being a CIO is it's not about technology, it's about business. And once you understand the business and how you can leverage technology to make business better, to move the needle, to be able to make those, that innovation within that area or transformation, then you've won, and then they ask you back more and more and more and more. So that's really where the shift is going. I think you'll see a lot more CIOs and CISOs on board seats, because we have a lot to contribute at the board level. There's a lot of things going on right now that there's a lot of risk and mitigation that needs to happen from all of the different cyber issues. And now when they want to start talking about cyber insurance, they want to know at a board level, why do I need cyber insurance? So when we can go in and talk to them, then that really helps facilitate them starting to respect us and wanting us as part of that environment and seeing that we can contribute to it. So that's really where the shift is going. Before technology, now it's more and more business. And obviously we have a lot more challenges now with the cyber side of things. So once we start addressing that with our board and they see us as the subject matter expert within that, then we start getting more and more interaction with them.
Right, absolutely. With respect to all industries, there's been an acceleration of digital transformation, to use some buzzwords here, but it is what it is. It's happened. So within the respects of your business, what accelerations have you seen take place in the last 4 or 5 months here?
Well, a lot of it is, like you said, with the digital transformation that's going on. So people are starting to understand that there's a tremendous amount of benefit that you can gain when you have data, and you take that data and you convert that data into information that's decision-making information for your teams that they didn't have before. For instance, one of the big things that we've done is we've always knew our profitability, but we never had daily project-oriented profitability. So now we know on a job what our profitability is every single day. So now we can head off the unpleasant outcomes. We can actually adjust, shift, and actually affect the outcome now. So all of that digital transformation and all the data that's out there and available, that's kind of always been available. We just understand, and we've always understood the value of it. But now that more and more people are going, hey, we have this data that we collect out in the field on a regular basis from all these different instrumentations. It's the OT side of our business. And with all the OT side of our business, and now we're capturing all that data. And now what we did was we're providing it back to our customers in a meaningful information way where they're deriving information from it and benefit from it. Now they love us. Now they want us because our competitors don't have that ability, because we've done that. And then the other thing, we're taking a step into AI with all of that OT data. And with that AI, now we're extrapolating information from that data itself using an AI engine that's given us even more information, and again, that our customers didn't have before. So now they're gaining benefit and gaining access to that, and they like it, and they want more and more. So we actually have projects going on with some of the tier 1 customers that we have to refine that even more. So those are some of the digital transformation issues that we're doing in oil and gas, believe it or not, which is, has been not very innovative in the past.
Right.
Now they're embracing it as a brand new way to be able to become more and more profitable in a time when it's more and more challenging.
Now, was that project underway anyway, or was it accelerated by all the events that happened?
It's been underway, but it's been accelerated, and that's what I think a lot of CIOs will tell you. One of the biggest transformations that we've been able to accomplish in the last 3 months is because it's no longer, hey, let's put this in pilot, let's go through this process, and in 6 months maybe we'll get something out and gain buy-in and mind share within our organization for that. And now it's like, we need it this week. We don't have time to change anything. We're going to do it. Everyone's going to embrace it. The leadership's going to get behind it and go. So now it's like things that used to take us 6 months to gain enough, headwind from the management and the leadership of the organization. Now they're going, hey, can we do this in 1 week? It's like, absolutely we can. Now we have that transformation going on. So that's one of the other big things that's really affected us, which is great.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Has that presented other challenges with respect to not being able to take the time necessary to evaluate the vendors you're working with or whoever the partner you're working with, right? Now you got to move fast, right? So
So I'm part of a group called the cyberhouston.org, and it's an ISAL, which is basically information dissemination for the community, trying to help people understand the challenges we face, which is one of the ones that you were just alluding to, which is, so now you do this and you get it out there. Well, we had to engage with a third-party vendor that we didn't have the regular due diligence time to go through and make sure that what's their profile, how secure are they in their cyber, and we know where we are on our cyber perspective. But now we're having to trust others, and so going through and vetting them typically takes longer than a week. So you have to put other controls in place where you can keep them at arm's length as you go through this process. So we've kind of created a rapid onboarding process that we go through, which is really important because the cyber side of things, that's a big part of a CIO or a CISO's role nowadays, and it's going to become more and more important because it's not just the regular blocking and tackling you have to do. You have to start to get into the AI side of things, and especially for us in our SCADA systems, the OT side of things, all the instrumentation, all the different things that we have out there. Now those are things that we have to really bring in underneath and help ensure the security of that, and that we're safe from a cyber perspective for all those things we never thought about before. Well, we do, but a lot of people haven't thought about the OT side of it. How do you keep a transmitter out in the field safe where someone can't access it, and then do something malicious or anything else associated with it? So those are some of the things too.
Oh yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. I mean, we used to see these projects just kind of like go on and on forever, right? And it just gets to the tail end of the project, and it's always the user adoption, which is the slowest side of the equation. But how have you seen the user adoption now? Because now it's like you have no choice; like you have to adopt it. So, are you seeing improved user adoption? I would assume.
Absolutely. So the user adoption, it's kind of amazing how quickly that's going forward right now. And part of it, I think, is because now that we're all remote, we're doing more to communicate. When you're in a meeting, within a group, and you have 4 or 5 different people on the conference line or whatever else. Now you're seeing everyone. You're seeing their body language. You're seeing the different aspects of what they're doing when you're on these meetings. And a lot of us are doing these regular stand-up meetings that we have with our team, brief, but we're staying in touch. We're staying in communication. We're making sure that we have that, the visual side of things, to be able to see their body language, to be able to make eye contact, be able to do all those things. And it's amazing how quickly people will adopt things when they see that shift in the where we are right now, because everyone understands that we're in a big change period of time right now. And so their willingness to continue to do that and the user adoption associated with it. We don't have nearly as much of the water cooler talk that we used to have, where people would say, why are we doing this or whatever else. People are much more pro adoption of these new things. So user adoption is actually improved. At least our experience has been in the field and from our back office perspective too.
Excellent. And so as we start to wrap up here, it's the top of the hour. We have till 9. So as we start to wrap up here, with respect to your career, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received? Something that would be applicable to people that are watching this show today.
I think the most important thing was what we had talked about, which is being able to speak to people. You don't speak up, you don't speak down, you respect that person, and you be present with them where you're listening and you're paying attention and you're doing that active listening. And you listen not for a pause so you can speak, you actually listen to hear what they're saying. So the communication for me, has been the biggest game changer. And my professor at U of H, Michael Parks, was the one that taught me that really important lesson of when you listen and how you do that. So that's back from 91 when I learned that lesson. But that has carried through and has done well by me, because the more that you can communicate effectively to people, and they really appreciate the fact that you're speaking to them and you treat them as equals, which we all are, then the value of that is they feel that, they believe that, and so they're much more willing to lower that defense and really communicate effectively, and really where you really talk and you really communicate, and then you can carry things forward. So that it goes with business leaders of different groups, of the board, of anyone. When you establish that rapport and that relationship, for a CIO, that's paramount, because they have to accept us and invite us into their environment for us to be really effective. And so once you establish that communication, so I would say the number one thing is the lesson of communication, speaking to people, and that it's really about people and being able to communicate with them.
Absolutely. Active listening, it seems to be a lost art, but that is the number one thing that I took away from that, the listening part, for sure. What is the best business book you've ever read, or a book you could apply to business? There's so many, right? Bill Gates' original book, but I would say the one book is Good to Great, because the concept behind that is a lot of people are okay with good, and good doesn't get you transformational type of innovation. Good keeps you good, but when you go to the great side, you have to risk a little bit of the good. So that book came out, and a lot of people started understanding if we don't risk and challenge good, which a lot of people are real comfortable in that area, if you don't challenge that to get to great, that's where the technology groups that I'm a part of in networking and other things, that's what we talk about, as well as within the CIO role, to be able to go in and say, good isn't good enough, and we can help the transformational side, because when you go from good to great, there's a lot of change. And so as a CIO, that's one of the things we're really good at. We help people understand change and culture change and the leadership that has to support that, and the process you go through to be able to create that change. So when you do that, you start looking at more and more innovative and transformational things within your company, within your business, and how technology can actually come into play and facilitate that change, that innovation. So Good to Great I think was one of the really good
books to be able to help people transition into challenge the status quo, challenge what you currently do from a process perspective, and be innovative and transformational within your environment, within your business. And technology, people, processes, and technology, that's all about what you can do to be that transformational CIO.
Awesome. Awesome. It's not a good book. It's a great book.
Yes.
Great book. Awesome. And last question for you today. George, what is something you do, like a daily habit you do on the daily to keep yourself dialed in?
Well, I think that I communicate with my team on a daily basis. I think that I also spend at least an hour each day learning new things within technology, within what we're doing. I understand our business. I sit in on all of our board meetings. That's not every day, obviously, but to be able to be dialed in and communicate with the team on a regular basis. And then personally for me, I do a lot of biking and a lot of exercising, a lot of swimming daily. Then that kind of keeps my mental acuity as much as you can in today's time with COVID and with everyone sequestered and not going out. So being able to have that as a balance, work-life balance, and that's one of the things with my team that we do a really good job on, that we all support each other in, is that work-life balance, making sure that we're always checking on each other. We really care about the team. So that's one of the things that really keeps our engines going smoothly, is making sure that we're in touch and in tune with our team.
Excellent, excellent. And real quick, because you mentioned it, you said you spent about an hour a day learning something new. What's something that you've been learning new recently?
Okay, well, I cheated the last few days, and I'm actually learning more about quantum mechanics. So
It's fun.
Yeah, it's awesome. There's a lot of new things coming out right now, different matrices and different philosophies and different perspectives on it. So I haven't been doing too much technology the last few days, but normally it's all technology, and a lot of it's on the cyber side of things and all the different things that you have to keep up with on a regular basis. And also the importance of from an OT perspective, that's getting to be more and more of a concern. It's one of the top things for the FBI and what they're looking at from a terrorist perspective, to be able to make sure that the OT side and our infrastructure is secure. So I'm getting more and more of the different things out there, information associated with that as well.
Excellent, excellent. Sounds fascinating. The quantum mechanics, I'm sure that relates to IT though. It all comes back.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. Yeah, you learn something, and then you're talking in a conversation, and it comes up. It's like, wow, I didn't know that would come up. Great. So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you for being on the show today, George. Minor tech issues, but we worked through it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kyle. Appreciate it.
Cool. Take care.
Okay. All right.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, guys, that's the show. Again, thanks for joining us this morning. Doubleheader. Apologies for the tech issues in the middle there. We'll get that ironed out for the next one. And again, catch you guys on Friday, July 10th. Elevate IT, the event has gone virtual. Love to see you guys there. Bye for now. See you guys next Tuesday.